Good afternoon, Senate Institutions. It's Friday, April 7th. We got a room full of folks that are have a lot to say as far as what goes on in their communities concerning wastewater and clean waters, water pollution. We have $320 million plus of monies that are coming through different sources of funding that came from the federal government. We have some match money there that to support to buy down those funds that seem to be like 12 to 1. We just thought we were starting to hear concerns from the community members of folks that have either bonded or thinking about bonding or making plans to develop their systems or improve their systems, and some concerns about whether these monies would still be available. And so I thought that maybe today we'd have these folks come in. A couple of my committee members had said it'd be very nice to reassure their communities that we're working hard to make sure these monies would stay available. So with that being said, because we have everybody here, I just kind of want to go around. We might as well just take just a quick moment to go around the room and introduce everybody, including the senators that are here and our very, very talented assistant. So Senator Monson.
Yeah, I represent Grand Isle District.
Wendy Harrison, Wyndham District. I live in Brattleboro.
Irene Hunter, Chittenden, North England, Fairfax.
Ryan Collmore representing the Rutland District.
Linda Lehman, Committee Assistant.
Senator Ingalls, and I represent the Essex District, which includes Orleans, some towns in Orleans County, all of Essex, and a couple towns in Caledonia. So we'll go around the room.
Dave Atherton, Pittsford Town Manager.
Which I'm here to protect the.
Sean Brown, Chief Operating Officer for the State of Vermont Agency of Administration.
Ryan Osborne, Director of Public Works, Town of Colchester.
Noah Bond, I represent the town of Brighton.
Eric Frank, Colchester Town Manager.
Tasha Wallace, Lamar County Planning Commission.
And on the screen. Go ahead.
I'm Jim Rotundo. I'm the Commissioner of Public Works and the City Engineer, City of Rutland.
I'm Megan Moyer. I'm the Division Head for Burlington Water Resources, overseeing drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater for the City of Burlington.
Yeah, hi, Bill Fraser, Montpelier City Manager.
I'm George McCain. I'm a past president of the American Society of Civil Engineers Vermont section and president of McCain Consulting in Waterbury.
Hi, I'm Bob Fisher. I'm the Water Quality Superintendent for South Burlington, and I'm currently the New England Water Environment Association president. I do apologize, though. I'm actually traveling in Ireland, so I'm probably going to lose service any second. Thank you.
Well, thanks.
Wow.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for making it.
You win the prize for most far away, so that's good. Yeah.
So a couple tight schedules, as what I've been kind of told. Megan, are you a little bit behind? Is Megan with us? Are you a little bit tight on time, or is anybody here that's tight on time that needs to go first?
I don't need to go first. I just needed to be done by like 1:45 or 2.
Well, why don't we have you start it off then, Megan?
Oh, okay. Quick question. Am I able to share? I am able to share my screen. Okay.
I'll have to make you co-host.
She'll make you she'll make you. Linda, did you get a chance to introduce yourself?
I did.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, you should be co-host.
Okay, let me just see if this works. Hold on, sorry.
Yep.
Y'all see that?
Yeah, I can see you.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm known for long slide decks, but this will only be a couple of slides, so I don't want to take up anybody else's time. As I said, I am the division head for Burlington Water Resources. I just wanted to say at the outset, you know, as part of my job, I directly oversee all of the budgeting and financial planning for your utilities. So there's a lot of challenges in my job, but budgeting is one of the freaking hardest parts. So I honor and, you know, trust me when I say I know that you do not have an easy task in front of you, especially in this current world where the needs across so many sectors outstrip the current funding. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today about 2 water quality funding lines in Vermont's capital bill, specifically the governor's proposal to increase funding to the municipal pollution control line, and also to go ahead and set aside the full amount of state match needed for Vermont's bipartisan infrastructure law funding allocation. You know, as the leader of Burlington, to be sure, I'm concerned about the direct impact of those decisions on our specific projects, namely one of the first phases of our wastewater treatment plant upgrade, as well as an outfall project. But I'm really here as a member of the water resources community to kind of talk to you about the bigger challenge and why I think it makes prudent sense for you all to fund the governor's proposal as proposed, so that we can really get down to the business of dealing with the bigger issue at hand. So let's see, hold on. Why is my slide not advancing? There we go. Okay. I don't want to say that the bipartisan infrastructure law is not awesome. It is, but it is not enough. You guys know the details. It's pulling down $320 million. I want to make sure that people know that only about half of that, a little less than half, is actually for just plain Jane refurbishment of the existing infrastructure. Our wastewater treatment plants are old, but they are still doing their job. They are responsible for the vast amount of water quality benefits that we have accomplished over the decades. A lot of the money is for very specific new issues like PFAS and lead service lines. So people need to keep that in mind when they think that this does seem like a windfall of money, is not meeting the full need. And that's really where the opportunity is for leaders like you, is to really step up and commit fully to not just matching these funds, but actually increasing the overall amount of money that's put towards water quality. I'm sure you've heard the state provide the $2 billion. They estimate the needs, the drinking water and clean water needs in Vermont to be about $2 billion in the coming decades. I don't know exactly where those numbers come. I haven't scrutinized them. I don't know if they're talking about the delta of what they know they have money for and what they don't. It's a really large number. And I'm going to tell you, as a water quality professional, as somebody who's made estimates in the past, often which are delivered to the state, that those estimates are likely a very significant underestimate. Why is that? Even Burlington, I've got a large number of a large number of staff, and even we have a challenge doing the type of meaningful, comprehensive, long-term capital planning that really would go into having a really good number. So when the state is reaching out to some of the smaller communities and trying to understand what their needs are, it's very unlikely that they have that sitting on a shelf and that it's fully up to date and has looked at all of the things and layers you have to peel back in order to really truly understand what that number. It's not taking into account the significant inflation and supply cost chain issues that we're all expecting. There's also this magnitude of the new regulatory pressures. We don't know, like, people don't have good costs for how we're going to deal with some of the PFAS challenges, and particularly the biosolids challenge. Many plants, wastewater treatment plants, drinking water treatment plants, they're not just due for their 20-year equipment upgrades. A lot of them, put their tankage in back when the Clean Water Act was passed 50 years ago, and a lot of those concrete tanks, their buildings also need to be revamped. I will also say, and I'm not opposed to this, but the emphasis that I've seen in the legislature this session on addressing the housing crisis and trying to make it easier to develop housing in designated growth areas, great idea. That is likely going to put additional pressure on plants, and some of them may even need to increase their capacity so that they can meet that challenge. How did we get here? Why have people not been able to keep up with the needed level of investment? Why are we, getting to the point where a plant is near failure before we're able to go ahead and proactively do our upgrades? The biggest reason is that a lot of these plants, a lot of these systems were built back in the 70s, Clean Water Act. There was significant funding, and it wasn't just the amount of dollars available for financing. In that era, the money that was coming down from the feds was largely in the form of grants. Grants don't have to be repaid. Most of the money that's available now although the EJA funding will help this a little bit, is pure loans that has to be paid back by ratepayers. That means you have to increase rates. Nobody wants to increase rates. So this trend of not just decreasing the amount of money, but also changing the formula of how it's being delivered and making it more in the form of loans really put a lot of municipalities in a place where they were having to make hard decisions and weren't necessarily replacing the things they needed to replace. A couple of other things. Some communities, even if they had a capital line item and were trying to proactively replace equipment, right, on a schedule versus doing a large project, I think what's been happening is with operation and maintenance costs increasing, you start to, you have to make choices. And when you're faced with replacing a piece of equipment proactively versus simply just keeping your plant running, applying the chemicals that you need to apply, dealing with the biosolids, the solid portion of wastewater that has to be disposed of, you have to do those things. Wastewater doesn't stop. It's 24/7. So what you see is oftentimes having to eat into those capital lines in order to fund the operation and maintenance. As you all know, there's competing pressures for ratepayer funds that has limited the appetite for rate increases. Property taxes are going up, housing costs are going up, even though a municipal utility manager may advocate for a rate increase, it is very hard to accomplish those sometimes. And so simply, I think a lot of municipal utilities, when they don't have the funding available, we've simply not been able to keep up with our capital investment needs. And as a result, most of our systems, Burlington's included, are well past their useful life at the same time that we're dealing with new regulations, which are going to have new costs. So my message to you is very simple. I would urge you to support the full $14 million of the Municipal Pollution Control Grant funding proposed in the governor's budget. And I would ask you to be prepared to allocate even more in the future. The state's already demonstrated the need. Those projects, those grants, ensure that those projects that are on that list, including Burlington's, can move forward without further burdening their ratepayers. And simply put, a lot of those projects may not proceed if they're not able to demonstrate to their community that they have these grant funds that they can then match with the debt service that they're going to be taking on in order to do the projects. On the issue of whether to pull down the match money now or later, here's what I'm worried about. I don't think that the legislature is not going to find the match money in the future. That would be silly, right? You have all this money sitting on the table. I'm not worried about that. What I'm worried about is that you're going to be forced to, for lack of a better term, rob other water quality pots of money in order to fund that match. And that is not what we need right now. I think setting aside reserves for known capital needs, and these are known capital needs and a known allocation, is prudent financial practice. And really, ultimately, I want you to go ahead and fund these fully so that future budget years can be talking about how we're actually going to increase the overall amount of money going towards water quality to address the gap that I'm talking about. And with that, I think I am done.
So just some questions here, and I'm gonna have a lot of questions today, and I won't burn up all the questions with you, but just because you're probably the largest municipality in the room, and not to disrespect with any of the other ones, because you're all kind of close, you're all kind of there. But so when you plan a project, how many years does it take before you think about it, before you can get a bond vote or plan it? How long does that take, Megan, before it actually sees the light of day?
I mean, it has gone very quickly. I will say that when we had our issues in 2018, we were not necessarily, you may all recall when we had some equipment failures that resulted in us discharging untreated wastewater. There were some projects that weren't very far along that we quickly accelerated and got a bond vote literally within the matter of like the 12 weeks, and then are working on implementing those projects right now. Typically speaking, we are, I would say maybe 2-3 years to develop those. So I will say, because it's public information, we are actively working on our next slug of improvements and anticipated to go for a bond vote in 2024, which is why I'm telling you that the number you're dealing with right now is about to get really big, even if you don't think about anybody else's needs. And all the other communities are doing the same. It's a big catalyst, this EJA money. And so people who may not have even been actively planning, right? They're looking at the landscape and they're thinking this is their chance to get going and to actually address some of the needs that have been deferred. And so I think that the number that you're seeing, the 14 million that's on the list, is just going to get bigger and bigger.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So Megan, not to quibble, but I'm looking at the governor's recommend now, and it's 10 million, not 14. And that 27 million, which is going to come out of the IIJA, is actually 24.3. And I'm basing that on what we heard from Joint Fiscal.
Yeah, I may be working off some older numbers, but yes, I am aware that there's already money, some money allocated. So you're right. You don't need to, you don't need to pull the full 27. And maybe I'm looking at other numbers. I think even if you funded at 10, right, there's 14 million of need. So still better than the 4 that I think the House passed, which I believe was sort of level funding the previous years. My big message is there's a pie of money, and what I've seen happen in my career is that you take from this pie, part of the pie, and you give it to that sort of the pie. I am ultimately asking for a bigger pie, a bigger slice of pie. I don't even like pie that much. Maybe I should be talking about cake, but that's what I thought.
We hear you loud and clear.
So one last question. We're going to save some for others, and I hope you can stay around until you have to go. So you're one of the bigger municipalities, and you're doing your planning ahead. And what kind of staff do you have to help you to get that through?
We're actually going through a staffing assessment because I don't think I have enough staff. But currently, I have four engineers, water resources engineers, on staff. I've recently, because of the financial challenges, even though the SRF money is great, it is hard to manage. And with all of the debt that we're taking on, I've recently expanded my staff to have 2 financial people within our water resources division. So I can safely say we have more staff than any other community, and it is still hard to both run the day-to-day operations and deal with all the fires, and also be planning the smoke detectors that you need to be putting on to protect yourself in the future. So I don't know how anybody else does it because I struggle.
Well, thank you, Megan. If you can hang around for a little bit, it'd be very useful. And I think you probably know who your legislatures are, and it'd be nice that you could advocate for yourself as well with them. And I think we're doing a fairly good job in this building as well. But by all means, let them know your concerns for sure.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. So now we're looking Rutland Department of Public Works, Jim Rotundo. How are you, sir?
Very good. How are you?
Good, good. Welcome to Senate Institutions, and thank you for coming.
Thank you for the invite. I did send in a detailed letter, so to be put into the testimony. So I'll just try to keep my comments today to a minimum. But basically, the city of Rutland strongly supports the governor's proposed budget as it relates to A&R state matching funds for IIJA, clean water and drinking water state revolving funds, and municipal pollution control grants. The city of Rutland, like most other municipalities, faces significant challenges with respect to its aging infrastructure. The city has spent millions upon millions of dollars replacing infrastructure that is functionally obsolete. However, the simple fact of the matter is that without significant subsidies, loan forgiveness, and pollution control grants, the city will continue to lose ground. Over the past eight years, we have taken a very aggressive approach here in Rutland City to replace aging and failing infrastructure. DPW has proposed many bonds that I'm pleased to say have all been successfully passed. But the need is great, and we can't get all the needed work done without strong assistance from the state. I can't stress enough how important it is to the city of Rutland to have an adequately funded Drinking Water and Clean Water State Revolving Fund made available to us. This is the preferred program that we extensively utilize to upgrade our water and sewer infrastructure. Both programs are already competitive, and I'm afraid that any cuts will only increase the money available, making it harder to get projects built. We were very fortunate to receive a significant sum of ARPA CSO funding from the state, over $7 million. However, when facing a total estimated cost of $135 million in 2022 to mitigate the city's combined sewer overflow problem, you quickly realize that we can't solve this problem without a great deal more assistance from the state. The cost of just one of the 22 identified projects in our long-term control plan was estimated to cost $7.7 million. And this project is under design as we speak. Cuts in funding would have a major negative impact on the progress we're able to achieve. Most recently, in March, voters approved 3 bond articles worth a total of $7.85 million. $2.5 million will be dedicated to upgrading the water distribution system, and another $1.85 million is going towards the Meadow Street sewer separation project and towards mitigating the impairment of Moonbrook. These projects will not proceed unless they are funded through the state revolving fund program. In a nutshell, the problem this municipality faces is the competing needs that all must be prioritized and addressed, as well as the sheer magnitude of those needs. Although I'm mainly talking about water and sewer here today, other departments, fire, police, recreation, etc., are all competing for the same city's resources. In addition to all the infrastructure needs, we also need to deal with all the unfunded mandates that also put a squeeze on our resources. Phosphorus reduction plans, water distribution service line investigations, 3-acre rule, requirements associated with us recently becoming an MS4 community are just some of the issues that we're dealing with. And I just wanted to add a couple more comments just to give you, these are excerpts from the letter that I sent in. But the city of Rutland has 30 miles, we have 83 miles of water main in the city. 30 miles of water main is over 100 years old, 22 miles of which are over 125 years old. So it just shows you, and there was a study done about a decade in-house. And that study, the results of that study said that the city of Rutland needed to spend $1 million for the next 100 years to get our water system into a reliable, sustainable condition. The wastewater treatment facility, we've got the largest wastewater treatment facility in the state. We just completed a $3.5 million wastewater plant upgrade that really wouldn't have been available if we weren't able to get the pollution control grant. It really made that project viable. And the thing about our plan is the plant is a regional sludge processing facility that receives and digests sludge from 16 surrounding communities. Our sludge processing equipment is over 25 years old and needs upgrades. The final dewatered sludge expelled from the plant then needs to be disposed of. Unfortunately, landfill costs are rising exponentially. Furthermore, the landfill capacity for the acceptance of this material is effectively shrinking. As a result, the city is about to begin investigating new technology that will either drastically reduce the amount needed to be disposed of or convert the sludge into usable products. This will be extremely expensive. Pollution control grants are a necessity to a community like ours that are in need of major upgrades and expansions. We appreciate all the assistance that the state of Vermont has provided in the past, and we're hopeful that you will continue to do so by supporting the governor's budget as proposed.
Is that, Jim, so you got quite a few projects going on down there in Rutland. Probably not knowing that for sure whether this match money will be there probably causes a little angst amongst your community.
Absolutely.
Keep going.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you, Jim, for your testimony. You mentioned that some of the pipes are 125 years old. Some of them are made of wood, if I'm not mistaken. Is that still true?
Well, all the wood water mains have been removed.
They have.
So,
I
right.
know we used to have 2 or 3 times a summer when they'd let go and we'd have all hell breaking loose. So that's good to hear. But yeah.
But we still have those samples in our office of the
I bet you
lines
do.
that we removed. But basically, like I said, I mean, I just wanted to demonstrate the need today. You know, we've got a community now. I think we've had an administration in the past. We've got a new administration now. But I think we are committed, and I think, you know, you could talk to the representatives at DEC, but I think they'll tell you that the city of Rutland is very serious about what we're trying to accomplish. We've got a large CSO problem here in the city.
Yeah.
As I said, over 135 million based upon our long-term control plan. So, you know, there's only so much money that we can get out of this community. The people are very supportive, but we're a disadvantaged community. We're not as affluent as the rest, and it's a tough thing for us to do. We've got a lot of competing needs. As I said, you know, we contemplated putting out a $10 million bond in March. It got whittled down to 7.85, only because there were 2 projects that weren't ready to really, you know, put on the ballot.
Yeah.
But with the state's help, we really feel that, you know, we're on a roll. We're making a lot of good progress with respect to water quality with Moonbrook. That project is about to go to construction. We've been working on that for over a decade. And, you know, we're trying to clean up Moonbrook. We're trying to clean up the creeks by stopping our CSOs. And we're trying to deliver clean, safe water to all the residents. So it's a huge task, and we very much enjoy the subsidies and the grants, and we're really, the way we look at them is it's a necessity for us to get this work done.
We thank you very much for your work and your testimony, Jim. Thanks.
Senator Harrison.
Yes, thank you. And I'm gonna keep my questions limited, because I know we have a lot of folks, but yeah, thank you for your testimony. And Mr. Rotundo, can you let the committee know, and if everybody could actually think about this and speak about it if you have comments. We don't have, in my experience with water and wastewater facilities, they don't typically have ultimate service areas and long-term plans. And I think especially ultimate service areas would be really nice to have. I don't think there's anyone from DEC, but if you are interested or working on an ultimate service area or a stormwater utility, since I have all these folks here, I would just like to know that briefly.
Well, I mean, we service sewer to the whole city. Some of it's combined, some of it's not.
Yeah.
But I do want to go back and just point out that after Megan's testimony that I want to just tell you the size of our staff. And again, why the funds are so important. Up until now, I've been the commissioner and the city engineer. I've got 1 assistant city engineer, and we've got 1 engineering technician who's really out in the field most of the time. So, you know, most of our work gets done through consultants. But again, I think we're getting a lot done. We've got a big appetite to try to solve this problem in the near future, but we're doing it with a very limited staff.
Yeah, let me just add, I should have said initially, no, these funds are critical, and they're fundamental to getting the work done. And I've been involved with these projects in Bellows Falls when I was there, when I was the manager, we did a wastewater plant, expanded it. So no, there's no way that these would happen without the fund. So I just want to acknowledge that.
Yep. Anything else for Mr. Rotundo?
No. Thanks again, Jim.
Thank you, Jim. I hope you can stay around and listen to the rest of it. So we're gonna go next to Eric Frank and Brian Osborne from the town of Colchester. Who wants to take the hot seat?
Go first very briefly. Thank you,
Yep,
Senator.
by all means, welcome to Senate Institutions. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having us. So first, I'm here to talk about the Mallets Bay sewer. I think everything that's been said so far by the other folks makes sense to me. It's different community, different perspectives, but Mallets Bay is a gem to the town of Colchester. It's where our town beach is. We have residents of all ages, income levels, people from all over the community use that. People from all over the state use Mallets Bay. It's extremely important to us. We've been working on a project to put a sewer in Inner Mallets Bay where we have some camps that are hundreds of years old that's been converted into homes for over 3 decades. We had 2 votes, one in 1999, all in the property tax. It failed. Had another one in 2018, partially on the local option tax, and that failed. Why? People think Colchester, it's a beautiful, wonderful community, but we actually have the 2nd highest percentage of low-income homeowners in Chittenden County. It's difficult to fund these things. We've got some beautiful homes, but we also, there is even affordable housing on the lake. As a young person, I lived in one of those homes, and they're kind of cobbled together. It's a fun place to live, but it's a diverse community. So most recently, with some ARPA funds and pollution control grants through the ANR's programming, we had in 2022, we had a vote pass with 74%. And so we're here. That's as good as it gets in Colchester for a big infrastructure project. And so, you know, we really need your support to get this through and to protect the bay for, you know, our residents, for the whole community. It's a resource for the whole state. And so I just want to say this has been a #1 priority for me, Public Works Director, the Select Board. This has been their biggest thing is water quality. We have some other community goals. We've really aggressively addressed stormwater, and now we're really working on sewer. We have the vote of the community. We have their support. People ask about it. They come to our Select Board meetings and ask, when are we going to, you know, improve things with the Mallets Bay and the old septic systems that need to be replaced with a modern sewage system. And we're just asking for your support for some more funding in the current and future years for this program.
I think the thing that most, not surprised me, but made me aware is exactly the point that you're making. You know, because where your location is, everybody thinks that, oh boy, they're the rich area of the state, and then you're not. And but even for somebody that's in your area, you know, the community that's in your area, what it takes and the years of planning that it takes for you to get to this point. And so, I mean, I can imagine these funds are very, very much available for you, and that if they hadn't been, you probably would just be going further out, trying to figure out how you could get to where you're at right now.
And we brought forward a proposal to the community, and we were determined eligible by the Agency of Natural Resources. That's not the same as appropriation, which is what you're here for, but we were easily eligible for these funds. And so our proposal to the community included the use of those funds. And yes, it was years and decades and even 2 recent votes to get this through. But for COVID, we probably would have tried again the next year, but we just need a little more time to get it together. But honestly, I feel like it's now or never for us. 3 times in 3 decades. That's about as much as we
might
can.
add that some of the reluctance is that Old Town doesn't get sewer. It's the lake that we're trying to protect along the shore, 2 miles, 4 miles there, something like that.
Exactly. It's Inner Mallets Bay, where again, we have all these camps that were built, you know, some centuries ago. They're very close together. They have land use protections. I mean, they can be 2 feet apart, and there's just not enough room for modern wastewater. The folks have rights to them. They enjoy them. But it's a bay that's enjoyed by everyone.
So where do we stand now on the funding? What were you getting, or what do you need?
So roughly there's about 5 million in ARPA funds. There's about 5 million in pollution control grants that we're seeking. And then the remainder of it is through the grant loan program through A&R. Brian can speak to more of the details, but roughly it's a third from 3 different places. And if we don't go forward with that, we just turn our ARPA money back to the federal government, because this was what we said was the most important priority. And as you've heard probably from the state and others, you have to make decisions and move forward with that.
So with the House, they sent us a limited amount, right?
Yeah, they did, yeah. Yeah, they got it down to where we were looking for 27 million. We were looking for 27 million and another 10 million. They basically got us down to less than 15, less than, they've taken out 23.3 million dollars of that money. And
So you've had 914,000 companies, is that correct?
No, that's not correct.
That's not correct.
No, we're working with staff to get that corrected.
Okay.
Well, my understanding was that the ones that are in the queue for next year have been funded with the House amount. So I don't know
Well,
what
maybe,
year yours was.
maybe they have that. I mean,
Well, that's
you know,
what Dave told us.
Yeah.
We generally understand that there would be appropriations over multiple years.
Yeah.
But I think as Megan Murick alluded to, if you get behind, you can't do it. And then the cost of construction might not work. And then what we propose to the voters might not work. And so I'm kind of begging you to try to help us keep up.
And then if you go to project and the people there to help you install the systems aren't available, and then you get delayed again some more, and who knows, as you said, you don't want to have to turn that money back over to the government when it's taking you this long to get to this point.
And, we all pay our federal taxes, and we want to draw down our fair share of the ARPA funds. And, just as what you're doing here, it's leveraging existing resources.
So that gets us started. Is that correct? That there's money we have to look for the future? Is that what this bill does now? Or is that giving us some money?
Yeah, the project that you have, the projects that you have moving forward, you've got a couple projects in there, I believe, or.
We have one, and our belief is that A&R would perhaps fund it over a couple years. They would give us some for the first year. It's going to take us 3 years total to build, but we'd like to start getting some of that, in the queue before we let a construction contract. And, it's a little uneasy situation to not know that it works. I mean, it kind of falls back on a loan, and Brian's going to talk a little bit about what that would do. But again, there's an affordability factor.
Mr. Osborne.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Thank you for coming to Senate Institutions. Appreciate it very much.
Sure, appreciate the time to come down and speak with you. I know that the DPC has already provided a lot of good detailed information to the legislature. So I don't want to be unnecessarily redundant with the information that they've already presented. And therefore we'll touch upon that just briefly, and then in the interest of your time and others, I'll keep the remainder of my comments brief as well. As you well know, the legislature has significant challenges every day and a lot of important goals, and clearly among them are both clean water and adequate and ample housing opportunities for Vermonters. From my perspective, what's critical to advancing both of those goals is an investment into basic water resources infrastructure, water, wastewater, stormwater. Without investment in those areas, it would seem to me to be very difficult to achieve those important goals. A couple of key programs that you talked about here that I think are particularly important is the State Revolving Loan Fund and the Pollution Control Grant Program. On the SRF funds, from my perspective, the opportunity to leverage tens of millions of dollars in federal funds at 20 cents on the dollar is just an extraordinary opportunity and presents an incredible investment opportunity for Vermont on behalf of all of its citizens. I like to think of it this way, that for every state dollar that we don't appropriate, the residents of Vermont lose the opportunity to get another $4 in federal funds to build the basic infrastructure that they need on a day-to-day basis. For the pollution control grants, you know, the DEC had submitted a list of projects from around the state that one had bond approval and two had filed applications for pollution control grant monies. What I wanted to point out when I look at that list, including Colchester's project, is those projects are aimed at, or many of them are aimed at addressing both of those needs, clean water and creating housing for Vermonters. So that's all I'll say about some of the DEC points. I wanted to talk a little bit more detail about the Mallets Bay project, kind of put a face on this project for you folks. Mallets Bay served entirely by aging and antiquated and failing septic systems, serves as a tremendous yet threatened resource for Colchester and the region at large. Accordingly, we've had this particular project in our town plan and our master plan for 60 years.
6-0.
60 years.
That's great.
Over that time, as Town Manager Frank pointed out, we worked diligently to try to bring this project forward. And over the last 30 years, we've got it to the voters 3 times in different ways, and finally we're able to get it approved in March of 22. Leading up to that, just to give you a little bit more information about Mallets Bay, we had completed studies using extensive DNA analysis that effectively documented the presence of human waste bacteria in Mallets Bay as a result of failing septic systems. Over the past 15 years, we've had 17 septic system failures in this small little lakeshore area. That's a failure rate that's 3 to 4 times higher than any area of Colchester. And to give you some context, 85% of Colchester is served by on-site septic systems. We have close to 6,000 septic systems in Colchester. The existing sites in Mallets Bay are environmentally and physically constrained, such that it does not allow a proper functioning, designed and constructed and functioning septic system to exist. These are limitations like depth to bedrock, depth to groundwater, poor soils, inadequate separation of receiving waters like Champlain, and inadequate replacement areas, very, very small lots. The problem is compounded in that the replacement of these systems is governed under existing state law that allows those systems to be replaced with what are referred to as best fit systems. What does that mean? Do the best you can with the significant environmental area constraints that you have. What does that result in? It results in septic systems, advanced septic systems that are very expensive, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, that don't meet the basic standards, performance standards that are associated with a properly functioning septic system. So that's kind of the current state of Mallets Bay. I wanted to touch briefly, just moving along here, a little bit of the financial aspects of the project. It's a $16.7 million project. We are expecting $5.2 million in PC grants. As Aaron mentioned, we have $5.1 million in ARPA funds, and the remaining $6.4 will be through the SRF loan program, being paid back by the 287 users of this new system. Statewide average for annual wastewater charges to a residential home is about $600. That's according to the Vermont DEC Water and Wastewater Rates Dashboard. The projected sewer fees for residential properties in Mallets Bay with this funding package that I've just described is $993, 65% higher than the state average. If we were to hypothetically try to imagine this project without pollution control grant funds, we're now up to $1,600 a year, which is almost 3 times higher than the statewide average for wastewater for a single family home. Who's impacted by that? Obviously, the users are impacted by that in Mallets Bay. There was an interesting article in the Brattleboro Reformer last October 2022, and the name of that article was, Vermont is the number 4 least affordable state for renters, particularly if you're renting in the Burlington metro area. It went on to include some statistics from the U.S. Bureau of Labor that the average renter makes an hourly wage of $21.99 an hour. That's about $46,000 a year. Within Mallets Bay, we've estimated that 78% of the people that will be served by this are properties that are occupied by renters. So we're talking about creating a huge and significant impact to relatively low-income people, while at the same time we're trying to clean up the significant sewage problems. So just to summarize real quick, the Malice Bay Sewer Project is shovel ready. We'll be going to construction next spring. It is both a pollution abatement project and it is a project that will increase housing in Chittenden County. Under the current zoning, the construction of the sewer will allow for construction of 100 new homes in Malice Bay. And as well, it will allow the conversion of seasonal properties to year-round properties, which adds even more housing stock into this area. The absence of the necessary PC grants for this project makes the project unaffordable and therefore unviable. And unfortunately, as Aaron mentioned, the inability of Colchester to move this project forward because it may not be viable without the PC grants, we lose $5.1 million in ARPA funding. So in summary, I would encourage the legislature to fully fund the state revolving loan fund and the pollution control grant fund and continue investing in clean water and creating housing opportunities for Vermonters. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Brian. We're gonna move now to Bill Fraser, City Manager of Montpelier. Mr. Fraser, thank you for coming today.
Thank you. You know, I couldn't make it down the street. Sorry.
Well, we knew it was a long drive. We didn't know if maybe you couldn't find it, but you're here nonetheless.
I couldn't find parking.
He was flooded.
Oh, that's funny.
I will be brief. I first of all, just hats off to Megan and Jim. They really laid it right out perfectly. Megan's presentation really sums up, I think, what the whole state is going through. You've heard a lot of details, so I'm going to try to stick to some high points, which is most of our older cities are really struggling with aging infrastructure. It might be a little bit different in every place, but that, you know, for example, you've read a lot about our old water lines, but other places you've heard descriptions. So, you know, the infrastructure need is huge. You could never put enough in. And I think the order of magnitude, I think, is really important. You're talking about $14 million versus $4 million. Is that right? Going into this fund. And I think, you know, I urge you to put in at least the 14 million. We're doing a project in Montpelier on East State Street. It's you know, it's a road. It's putting all the water and sewer lines and new storm drains in, fixing a CSO, obviously includes roads and sidewalk. That one project altogether is over $7 million. We're doing an upgrade to our wastewater plant. Phase 2, our voters approved a $16 million bond. That's after a $19 million phase 1. And then we've got, I think we've identified $5 to $7 million of immediate need in water and sewer lines that need to be upgraded. You know, we're not alone. Everyone else up there. So I think when you talk about $14 million statewide, you know, that can be gobbled up by any one of us at any time. So the need is there. It's huge. I think the point that Aaron Frank made about inflation is, you know, if you take some time to wait for these approvals, you know, the project costs go up already. Our East State project has changed drastically since we first got voter approval. And this isn't intended to be a bash, but the time delays for state review. You know, one of the things that's happening right now is, you know, every town in the city, every town in the state, every town in the country for that matter, got ARPA money. And we're all trying to do a backlog of projects. And so that leads to a shortage of contractors. And it means that the state folks that review all the plans and give all the approvals, you know, there's no more of them. So this is no fault to that. It's just the time it takes to get approvals, to get things approved, to go out to bid. You know, we've been waiting months for a project that we were hoping we were going to do this summer, which now may get put off to next summer because we can't get it out to bid on time. Again, I'm not blaming them. It's just that's a reality. So whatever can be built in to provide funding for cities, to provide flexibility. And, you know, Megan was 100% right when she talked about how this used to be grant funding, and now we're still creating a burden on long-term burdens, and we appreciate the interest rates, we appreciate the situation, but it's still creating a revolving loan and some assistance to direct, and you know, I know the state of Vermont can't correct this problem. That's really all I have to say about this. I support the governor's recommendation at the minimum, and urge you all to realize that infrastructure, whether it's water, sewer lines, water lines, storm drains, any of it, are just critical needs, especially for these old communities. So, thank you.
Well, Mr. Fraser, I just want to also say in some of you larger communities, but I know for instance that not only are you serving the needs of your community, but you're also serving the needs of some other communities that maybe don't have the capacity. You know, you're not just basically protecting the environment of your community, but you're helping other communities. And so I imagine some of these dollars or some of these delays would help you to be able to do more, to allow you for more capacity to help surrounding communities as well. Is that a fact?
That's correct. Yes, we serve our sewer treatment plant serves Berlin as well, and they have a sewer distribution system which then ties into ours, and we would love to be able to expand if it were physically possible. Our water system also includes parts of Berlin, and so yes, we certainly are all for regional solutions on that, and but I think, you know, much like, you know, it was talking about Rutland, and the senator referred to the wooden water lines, and we had a few of those too. They are finally gone, but you know, these old cities have and community, you know, downtown centers have been around for long times and are really, you know, trying to upgrade and keep up with the needs and the sort of funding streams that had allowed those to happen really ended in the 70s and 80s, and we've been limping along ever since. And now I think we're at a collective crisis around the state.
Thank you, Mr. Fraser.
Thank you.
Any more questions for Mr. Fraser? Mr. Fraser, we hope you can stay around for just a little bit longer. We're making through our list pretty good, and we appreciate you coming in today.
My pleasure.
David Atherton, Town Manager of Pittsford. Welcome to Senate Institutions, and thank you for coming, and thank you for waiting.
So I have the luxury, the curse of actually being town manager in 2 towns. Recently, I just did a tenure in Brandon where we were able to benefit from using federal funds, obviously through our Segment 6 project, that the town benefited from going 1.3 miles of water, sewer, storm that I don't think we would have been able to afford or even accomplish without that federal funding. Also, another Brandon thing was we're just put $5.5 million into our wastewater treatment plant, which is happening right now. It's not enough. You know, fellow managers here have pretty much said it, that, you know, $5 million goes nowhere in these systems, and basically this is a Band-Aid for 15 years maybe. Collection system, whether 22 miles of sewer in Brandon, if we could, you know, our plant, both plants, Pittsford and Brandon, we have capacity until it rains. You know, because there's so much infiltration that comes in with all of that, that if we had collection systems, you know, rebuilt with water sewer lines that it would really benefit with the, you know, help with the struggle that the plants are taking. In Pittsford now we're looking at doing, you know, segments 2, 3, and 4 on Route 7, and our village has a very small wastewater system of 250-ish people. That, you know, that's looking at us talking with our engineer yesterday, which we have to hire everything out because we don't have the resources for one. That's $2 million, you know, on 250 users. That's crazy. That's a lot of money. We'd like to expand. Obviously, we have the police academy that's been talking about, you know, getting sewer there, which would enable us to add municipal sewer to a whole road that would benefit for, you know, getting more user fees. South end of Route 7 the same way. So I would love to stress the need that, you know, in being a recipient of it, that this really works when we can match federal funds, or, you know, Brandon had the luxury of only having to pay 5% of that whole project, which was phenomenal. But and even with our wastewater plant upgrade, which I know we're going to have to do in Pittsburgh when we do the lines, and it is going to be a user a user fee increase. And I think we had like 3 steps in Brandon that, you know, it's going up. So it is on the backs of the users, and at some point they're not going to be able to afford it. I think Aaron said, you know, we're pretty same thing in Brandon and Pittsburgh. We're not a high rent district, and just looking at delinquencies and how many folks struggled even through the pandemic, that with, you know, the assistance to pay delinquent water and sewer was a very high demand. So making this affordable for municipalities to do this and have that money to get these projects completed will enable us to do multiple things in our towns. You know, with the housing problem we have, we can't expand if we don't have the capacity to do it. So, but everything I think has been said before me here today, so I don't need to bore you with all
What kind of
that.
staff do you have to help you to get ready and to be able to be prepared for when these dollars are available?
We have 2 operators at our wastewater treatment plant, and we hire outside engineering. You know, so it's pretty small. And Brandon was the same way, two operators and outside engineering.
How's that counter guy doing for you, Brandon?
Well, so he's probably getting close to retirement, but you know, well, there's a perfect example. When the water lines were redone on Route 7, Ray figured out that it was like millions of gallons that they were losing through old lines, that, you know, they were able to account for all of that water now. And that's money. It's really money down the drain that they were able to save. So we have a similar problem in Pittsburgh with a water line on a bridge on Route 7 that definitely has a leak in it. And, you know, that's just money pouring out of the line. So yeah, we appreciate all the money, but we certainly could use more. And 14 million won't go very far. We've spent that in 8 years in Brandon, you know, so, and Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
So.
Well,
Yeah, go ahead. Sure, charge your representative enough for his service.
He's just outside of the system. We sent him a bill.
He said he'd pay extra.
Yeah, let us know. He's willing to pay.
Anything you need, Senator.
So call him more.
Yeah, so Brian mentioned the match ratio and the administration's figures. I mean, to me, and this is what I'm hearing from everybody, this represents literally a once in a lifetime opportunity in terms of matching funds. We're looking at, originally it was that 27 million in the state match funds. Now it's 24.3 or whatever it is. But the match is more like 12 to 1. So again, I use the example, if you give me $1 and I give you 12 back, that's a pretty good deal. And most people would do that all day long and all year long. So, you know, we're looking at possibly $320 million to go into this revolving fund. And we need to have it there. You know, Uncle Sam needs to see it sitting there before we're going to be eligible. So I think it's a great idea, and we appreciate everybody coming out today. Yeah.
Tell Raymond I said hi. I was married to his sister, so.
Okay, I will do that.
It's good you can say hi.
For who? Yeah, I figured I'd let him get all his testimony. Throw that out there. Mr. Noah Bond, Town Manager, Brighton. Welcome to Senate Institutions.
Nice to meet everybody. Happy to be here.
Glad to have you here.
So I'm a very prepared person. I prefer a speech. I'll just speak to the heart. I think everybody else has spoke to the facts. If you really wanted to see it, I'm more than happy to take you through the wastewater treatment facility and the water treatment facility. And I think you would certainly see the need. So I'd just like to start by saying thank you for the opportunity to speak here. Like I mentioned, my name is Noah Bond, Town Manager of Brighton. And I'm here today to speak on behalf of the Brighton and citizen area. It's often said that change is difficult, but sometimes it's the only way forward, especially for small towns like ours. We need to modernize, not to become something new, but to preserve the small town spirit of communities that makes our hometown so special. To quote Abraham Lincoln, the best way to predict the future is to create it. Though it is difficult for a town like Brighton's size to evolve and embrace new ideas and developments, it is just as vital that our infrastructure remains updated and accessible. To keep up with the pace of our neighbors, Brighton's needs the necessary financial support to keep roads, schools, and other facilities modern and safe. For years, Brighton has experienced economic stagnation and loss of employment opportunities, all of which have come and had a negative effect on our local economy. Therefore, it is paramount that the money you allocate to our town and to other towns be spent wisely and with a long-term vision, not just 5 or 10 years, but 20 or 30. Any development needs to be beneficial to our future and the generations to come in order to guarantee the health of my town and other towns alike. Now's the time for us to create our own future in small towns all across Vermont. And that means building infrastructure that can carry us forward for the next decade or two. Let's build bridges between the generations to ensure our youth remain connected with the long-term future of our community. Let's invest in our existing businesses and look to attract new ones. But again, we can't do it without infrastructure. It's vital. You know, I would love to have new businesses come in, but not if they can't flush their toilet and get clean water. It's just not going to happen. And let's work towards sustainable solutions to the environment and issues that we face on a regular basis, taking small but sure steps to protect our natural beauty and health. I know that the federal government recently announced $6.5 billion for states, tribes, and territories by the EPA to provide needed capacity for essential drinking water upgrades through the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. And this is an important and vital investment in public health overall and for the children for generations to come. In conclusion, I want to remind you of the importance of allocating funds to small towns and other large towns in Vermont for much needed infrastructure and societal developments. It is through these improvements that our small towns can evolve and meet the demands of the modern world. Change may not be easy, but it's necessary. By taking it one step at a time and involving the community in our progress, we can create a sustainable and prosperous future for Brighton and other towns alike.
So no, you got a population of about 1,100 up there.
Roughly.
Yep, you got it looking like you got like a $5.5 million project you're doing.
That's correct.
That a hard sell?
Not only is it a hard sell, but without the match, it's almost not affordable. That would be on the backs of the
and that doesn't take care of all your town. That's only taking care of a percentage of your town. So a lot like what some of these projects are, but a lot like what Colchester is, where you've got 2/3 of your town that's not on the structures that you're trying to replace, but you have the same situation. So you've got town folks that need to believe in this, and you need to sell them on the idea that they need to be environmentally conscious about what's going on. So I can imagine that this money's pretty important to you.
Extremely.
Yes.
So it's impressive that an 1,100 population town has water and wastewater.
It is.
Yeah.
It works
Was
very.
there some sort of problem that?
Unfortunately, I can't speak to that
Okay.
because I've only been at the job for 6 months.
Oh, really? Well, congratulations.
Thank you very much. But I can speak to the fact that it is certainly an aging infrastructure. And if you guys would like to see photos, I've definitely got them on my phone here. But yesterday I toured the water treatment plant, and I kid you not, it's a 100-year-old pipe. That's literally.
You showed me the valve on his phone of this 100-year valve.
And that's just the water. That's not the wastewater.
Yeah.
They ever do it for 1,100 people? I mean, that's amazing.
I know, that's what, there must have been some sort of issue, but it's wonderful. It's a huge asset to the community, especially if there's folks nearby who want to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But when I tell you it is duct taped together, that's no exaggeration. I really mean I went in there and you could see around the pipes and everything, there was literal duct tape. So, that's a local issue as well, but we can certainly use the funds to get it up to snuff and where it needs to be to expand and grow and to have with community needs.
And you're in the queue, right?
We are in the queue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anything else you'd like to add?
No, just thank you for your time and I hope we can continue to work together and get these funds and help our communities.
Sounds
Yeah,
great.
thanks for
Thank
coming.
you very much. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Mr. McCain, are you Bob Fisher, Green Mountain Water Environmental Associations? Are you still with us, sir?
Yes, hi. Can you hear me okay?
Thank you for hanging in there.
Can you probably pull over Brendan for a second, right along? Thank you. I'd like to say, so first of all, I represent South Burlington. South Burlington doesn't have the really aged infrastructure that often many of the, other older things do, but still the costs are enormous for any of these things. We have 2 very advanced wastewater facilities and 34 pump stations, the most in the state. And my budget's about $5.2 million, but of that, about 1.2 is the bond on the 2011 upgrade at the Airport Parkway facility, We just passed our bond for 34 million at the for the Bartlett Bay upgrade. Every 20 years, these facilities need to get upgraded and need to go through a full evaluation by state and federal mandate. And so that'll be another 1.8 million. So I'll have to go from 5.2 to 1.8. This is at a time when chemical costs have increased. I pay over $200,000 a year for alum. That has already almost doubled. Sodium hydroxide over 100, and that has gone up 53% just this year. And that's so I'm going to come up 1.8 million just to cover the bond of the upgrade for a facility that is showing its age but still performing well. So you can see what a great thing this is. Another meat. There are 55% of Vermonters are on septic in Vermont. That is the most in the nation by far. 99% of this is processed wastewater facilities. That there's a lot of issues with that. When these go down one facility, even it's very hard to process. So the state revolving fund, is critical. All these things. I don't want to be redundant. I'm sorry because I did lose service for a little while, so I'm standing here. But as we get a C from every 4 years, the American Society of Civil Engineering does it. We get a C- for stormwater, C for drinking water, D+ for wastewater. But as people have stated, this is a huge amount of money. The amount of money of the state, that would be lost by not giving the full federal, by fully funding it is immense. These are, like I said, these are facilities, very expensive and very difficult to deal with and whatnot. And you can't really see Ireland probably too well, but sorry, my wife didn't like that. Sorry about that. So I'm sorry. Any questions?
No, just yeah, you're not in an aging system, as you said, but I'm pretty sure that these funds to you are as important as everybody else's.
Exactly. These are immense. I'm just trying to give a perspective, even for a facility, for a thing that I will have to come up. Just think of, I'm going from 5 million to 7 million just for the bond for one facility, and these are loans. These SRF is loans. You continue to go up as you get up over 2.5, 2.7%, you have a hard time even bonding. Once you get over 3%, and some municipalities in Vermont are over 3%, you have a hard time even from a bond bank, or you certainly increase the cost of borrowing the money. So now is a once in a lifetime opportunity that all this federal money can be leveraged. You'll never have this opportunity again. And 49% of it, of the IUJ money, and has to be will be forgiven for disadvantaged communities. So this is a huge benefit for Vermont.
And I think where you differ from a lot of the folks that are here, I mean, you're in a growth area, so you've got to make sure that you still can plan for the future and have capacity to be able to supply the housing that Vermonters are need and demanding.
Exactly. The wastewater facilities is right up there. Usually transportation and your highway system with the most expensive thing that a citizen owns. I mean, replacement of the full system would be hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. It's the piping under the ground that is so expensive throughout. It's been built through time, like the Eisenhower highway system. So it is, it's one of the most expensive things a citizen owns, and they don't even know it's there.
Yeah. Well, we thank you, sir. Anything else you'd like to add today? I don't think we might have lost him just about that time. Either.
Well, I was just about to say, I couldn't believe the quality coming from Ireland. I drive home to Rutland and I lose cell service halfway down, and yet we can hear him clear as a bell. Anyway,
real good.
hit a pub there, Bob. Hit a good pub.
In Ireland. Yeah.
Ireland.
He's in Ireland. Yeah. George McCain, American Society of Civil Engineering. You still with us?
I am still here. Thank you.
Well, thank you for coming. Welcome to Senate Institutions today.
Thank you. So I'll jump right in. As I mentioned in the intro, I'm a past president of the Vermont section of the American Society of Civil Engineers. Recently was one of the co-authors for the 2023 report card for Vermont's infrastructure, which highlighted and evaluated the needs related to infrastructure across the state. I'd encourage all of you to take a look at that if you have a chance. It'll give you a good idea of the current state of Vermont's water and wastewater systems, the funds needed for this infrastructure. And just quickly to note of the infrastructure that we reviewed in the report, wastewater was the lowest scoring category, followed closely by stormwater infrastructure, and then drinking water. So there's a huge need for improvements in these systems. And right now we have a huge opportunity to leverage these federally matched dollars for clean water infrastructure projects that are going to have, a tangible impact on the quality of life for folks across the state. We'd hate to run into a situation where we're jeopardizing any kind of match on these funds. As a lot of folks have already pointed out, infrastructure projects require a significant investment of both time and capacity at the state and local level. And failing to set aside the required match could create uncertainty for communities who need to decide whether to invest their time in these kinds of infrastructure projects. And as to whether the state will have the available resources needed to implement them if we put this off. Regarding the municipal pollution control grants, we know there's a need for around 14 million in pollution control grant funding already for our local communities. And a lot of times these can be the difference between a project being able to proceed or not. Many local municipalities pursuing these grants, they're taking on a large amount of debt for multi-million-dollar improvements to their wastewater and stormwater infrastructure. These grants help lower debt, avoid excessively high user rates and other disadvantaged things. And then when rates become unaffordable, delinquencies can rise. It further strains their municipal systems and the charging systems. And in the current inflation environment, these grants take on an even greater importance as they may be the only way that a project is made whole after the bid. So, we've got a chance now with 24 million in state matching funds to get an infusion of over 300 million into the state revolving fund programs. There's over 100 projects that have been submitted to the state for funding consideration, many of which are only viable if we completely take advantage of these match dollars through the IIJA funding. So I think that we're just really asking for your help to protect our vital investments into this infrastructure. We have some of the oldest infrastructure in the country, and we really want to move forward with this so we can have tangible improvements in these areas of infrastructure.
George, what do you do? I mean, I know you're American Society of Civil Engineering. Are you working with towns? Are you advocating for them? Tell us what you do?
I'm a professional engineer. I'm a design engineer. I work mostly on private residential or small commercial projects. We don't work specifically with towns.
Yeah.
But yes, I'm a design engineer and a small business owner.
Nice. Any questions for George?
Oh, that was great testimony.
Yeah, I'd love to see your report, especially if it shows all of the plants in Vermont. If you don't mind providing that.
Absolutely. No, it's available on the website. If you've got I got Linda's email, I think from here, I could send it to her
Okay.
or anybody through.
Perfect.
That'd be great. Okay, we're winding down the list. Karen Horn, Director of Public Policy and Advocacy, Vermont League of Cities and Towns. Welcome.
Hi.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yes.
Karen Horn with the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. Apologize for the sunglasses. I've got eye issues going on. So I think you've heard really excellent testimony. Actually, I wish that all of you would be testifying in every bill in the State House right now because reality check 101. But yeah, we really find that towns are moving on projects at a unique level of readiness and with significant motivation now because of all the federal money that's coming in. And also because you funded assistance to help some towns that never thought that they would actually get to this place proceed with projects. You funded the BLCT Federal Funding Assistance Program. You put money into regional commissions last year to help towns get these projects in a state of readiness. You've heard a lot about the kinds of money that's needed. The Agency of Natural Resources project list that's on your website is like 120 projects long. And I think the real concern for us, because we did talk to the chair of the House Institutions Committee, and the House Institutions Committee, along with yours, has always provided match when it was needed. But we're talking about a much bigger need this time, at a time when the economy might be heading in a not auspicious direction. So we're really concerned that if all those 120 projects come to fruition and the match funds aren't there, that a lot of them are going to be abandoned. Like those village wastewater districts that would enable the creation of housing, they just won't happen. So,
or what will happen, and I apologize for jumping in, or what will happen is that they'll take monies used to fund this match, but then won't expand on other projects that could possibly happen. And you're going to steal money from future years to fund something that we have the ability to fund now, and not be able to move ahead.
Was it the House decision to cut this, or was it higher up, or how did that come about?
My understanding is that it was the House Institutions Committee that decided to reduce from the $62 million that the governor asked across everything, not just water and wastewater. And then they put, I watched your testimony earlier this week, but they also put some of those dollars into the appropriations bill.
I do appropriations.
Yeah, so it's a very tangled web.
Yeah, well, I knew it came from somewhere, but I didn't think it was their decision to do this. I thought upper up.
Oh, I don't know. I'm just a lobbyist. I'm not privy to all that.
No, I find that's where it's coming from. So,
I don't know, but I think the concern for us is we don't want to get involved in like where the money comes from or what's not funded. But when these projects get to the point that they're ready to be implemented, we need to have match dollars available. And these projects are furthering state objectives for housing, for economic growth, for cleaning the lake. The number of CSO projects is pretty impressive. So that's it. The one other thing I did want to mention, Senators, is that back in the 70s, when a lot of these projects were first built, Island Pond Lake, Brighton, excuse me, it was 90% federal funding. It was like a whole different ballgame.
And there were grants, not loans.
And they were grants.
Right, it was pollution, that was when the EPA started, it
Right.
was huge, and it cleaned rivers, and it
And
worked,
that's why they were built then.
because there was the money.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, good. Anything else that you'd like to add?
No.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Karen.
Thank you.
Tasha Wallace, Executive Director, Lamoille County Planning Commission. Welcome and thank you for your patience very much. And welcome to Senate Institutions.
Oh, thank you. I haven't been in here in a long time. Thank you. And I just want to echo Karen and other people's remarks. People have said so many valuable things so far. So I'll just try and touch on some of the things that we feel strongly about, not just in Lamoille, but the regional planning commissions. In Lamoille, we're actually the second fastest growing county behind Chittenden. And we have a lot of development pressures and a lot of small communities. We've got a number of projects on the list, a pump station in Stowe, which isn't currently funded, and a soil-based wastewater system in Wolcott. And I would say, like, even though Stowe is a wealthy community, their sewer service area is predominantly small businesses, restaurants, hotels that employ many low-wage individuals from all around the county. And those are very small margin businesses. And so user fees can be challenging. So even Stowe would struggle to proceed without match. And I think that's very important, that it's not just needy communities. Wolcott, which has about 1,600, so slightly larger than Brighton, does not currently have a system. And for Wolcott, it's about housing and economic development. And so everyone's been talking about the wastewater and the pipes and all those things, but for planners, what we see is the housing and the development pressures. And if you look at many of the small villages around Vermont, that if they don't develop water and wastewater systems, they won't be able to do infill because mound systems take up space, and so the downtowns are not going to develop as kind of very closely based clusters, but there's going to be a lot of space to accommodate the septic systems. And what we really like to see are these kind of dense, thriving village areas. And it feels like for so many of the village areas that don't have water or wastewater, there are development pressures. You know, the state is also talking about bringing broadband all around the state. And if you look at a small village, it's once the broadband gets there, the economic dynamics are going to significantly change. And we need to be able to fund those water and wastewater systems for those communities. Wolcott has been trying to get any kind of system for over 20 years. And so we're very excited that they finally got funding, and we're seeing the small villages do the hard work to make these things happen. And some of these communities don't have any staff to make these things happen, and are working with the regional planning commission. So we feel that this funding is just very, very important.
Well, thank you. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, that's it. Everyone else said all the important
Well,
stuff.
everybody's added very, very important stuff. Very, very important stuff. Last, we have with us Sean Brown, Chief of Operations and Agency of Administration. Welcome, Mr. Brown.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Well, we appreciate you staying around to add to our discussion.
No, I wanted to be here for all the testimony. I want to thank everyone. It was very helpful and informative, and so I appreciate your time. You know, we are thankful for the work of the House in the capital bill that they passed, includes much of the governor's priorities and projects. Although they have made some changes and included some language, and particularly around the cash fund that was concerning to the administration. And I know you heard yesterday from Commissioner Gresham and his team on that piece of it. And then you also heard from A&R on some of the changes made to their section and the match that are concerning, and that's what a lot of the testimony here was. So I'm going to focus my remarks today on some of the other areas of concerns that we have for the capital bill, in addition to those, but happy to answer questions on it, on any area, and work with the committee as well. You know, the first, you know, there was the governor didn't include anything for the State House expansion in the capital bill. It's no secret the administration opposes State House expansion. The House included $250,000 of bonded dollars for the project, and it was for design purposes. You know, and we've been trying to hew very closely to, you know, the intent of the cash fund, which was for planning and design. And so we believe using bonded dollars for design is, you know, is not appropriate. And, you know,
Let me do one thing, just one thing. Let me excuse these folks.
Yes.
And then we're gonna get a little bit more in it. So I want to say, I'm gonna say to everybody that was here, thank you very much. You know who your representatives are. You know who your senators are.
Thanks, Dave. Safe trip back.
You know who everybody is. So please reach out and let everybody know. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Sure. No.
Has anyone said they weren't going to fund the match? What I have heard is that the match would be funded in future years.
How do you know that?
I'm not
People get
saying that.
elected, I mean, nobody can make those promises, right?
No, but has anyone said it wouldn't be?
We don't have
I mean,
to.
But how do you know?
No, but
But how do you know? They can say whatever they want. We have the money now. And so how do you know it's gonna be?
Because it would be absolutely foolish.
Exactly, but here's,
Which is what
here's the-
Megan said.
but here's the point that I wanna make to everybody. Some of us haven't been around here long enough to see how hard a budget is when you don't have $10 billion of federal monies to be sitting here. And we have the monies available to us now. So why even take the chance to spend that money until, you know, that is the conversation. Why even take the chance of even doing it? We have the monies available to us now.
Because they want to spend it somewhere else.
Well, I get that. I get that, but that's just the way that it is.
Their choice is something else.
Yeah, I think the administration's concern is that we do have the funds now, and by not funding it, you are actually creating a base pressure in those outer years, because you know that will be there. So you're creating a base pressure that you know you have to fund. And as Senator Ingalls indicated, and I've been in state government for quite a while. I started in the early 90s, and I've been through many cycles of booms and busts. And bust times are really challenging. Even a level funded budget is a reduction budget when you have your other pressures. And I've been here when we cut programs and not been able to fund very crucial services as a result of down, you know, general fund downgrades. And
Have we ever cut the water wastewater budget?
I'm not sure there, but there's been times
mean,
there's not been
it
a
was just
transportation match.
so
We don't.
foolish.
But there have been times where you weren't able to match what you needed to match or whatever, or you were not able to do other projects just as important because you spent monies in earlier years that you weren't able to expand upon. You weren't able to make progress. I mean, is that a fair statement?
I would say that's fair.
That's why I'm against the fee increase. We don't need it. There's no reason we should be increasing fees. I mean, it's simple as that. We went into this not needing them. Now they're saying, we gotta have them. $21 million.
We can't change that.
Well, I'm gonna lose, but I'm close to it.
And I apologize.
So again, and that's the administration's concern, and we have the funds now, and we can set them aside as good prudent policy. And then also, it really helps with our bond rating, with the federal credit ratings and good sound financial practices. And so those are our concerns and why we believe it should be set aside now.
So is set aside put in this budget?
The governor funded it.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
So if it didn't get spent, because there aren't all those projects next year, the money would become available again. Some future legislature could
Well, as you,
reallocate.
I mean,
Unless
yes,
you
but
put
that's.
it in a reserve fund.
Well,
Being in the budget isn't gonna save.
Well, that's why we put it,
I mean, we should
that's
have
why
that
we
conversation.
propose to put it, to transfer it into the cash fund, because it is a separate account, sort of like a reserve account. And and we created that with the understanding of the legislature that it would be used for capital projects and these type of projects. And so we would hope that would be honored, that agreement, would be
Right.
honored.
That money would be saved.
Yes.
So, right, it wouldn't be just cash sitting there. It would actually be transferred.
It would be. in the
Right,
cash.
it would be, Senator Harrison, that money would be parked into the cash fund so that we could use it as
And draw
a
down
match
as-
fund,
as-
right, draw it down as we need.
Yeah, which needs to be defined too, but,
Exactly.
I mean,
Right.
we're making assumptions in some cases and not making assumptions in other cases and picking and choosing. But that's what we do, I guess.
Well, I think that the biggest assumption that could be made here that I see as wrong is that, don't worry about it, there'll be money later on to match federal dollars.
I'm not saying don't worry about it, I'm saying, I do think we need to talk about it, but let's not assume that it will be gone, that it won't be available, because I suspect
Well,
that we have funded that for decades, and it would be
But
horrible
Well,
to
what
not.
what you're not seeing in my eyes is that you're not seeing a downturned budget. You're coming in when there's $10 billion that we've spent and money's been free. When we have the chance now for $320 million, 12-to-1 return, why mess with
Right,
that?
exactly, 12-to-1 return, and it's been that way for decades. So, I mean, the program is actually the same as it's been. There's just an infusion of funds. I'd really like to talk to the.
And our other
folks
concern
about
is, if even the legislature's own economist, Tom Cvet, indicated in his January report that Vermont could be looking at its largest drop ever in general fund revenues, almost 9% in '24.
From
current.
Because the
current level.
revenues are higher.
they're higher, but also
Because
they're
the federal
predicting a
funds.
significant.
The,
downturn.
not federal monies.
No, this is state, our general.
General fund,
Our
monies
general
that
fund.
come into the state from
Through our
people,
residents.
rooms and meals.
Okay, so you're talking
and-
about tax.
Yeah, Tom Cadet indicated, and
The
ours, and our, the, economist that the administration uses concurs that we could see a significant, most likely see a significant downturn in 24 and beyond, and that's our concern about creating the base pressure in.
Okay, that would be good for us to talk about.
Yes, yes.
I think from my point of view, the intention is there to always have this done. But if you remember back to 2008, or you remember, everything is cycles. And we are due, perhaps overdue, for some tough times. The IIJA money is to me, a once in a lifetime.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
not gonna happen again.
Yeah.
And it's also a sure thing if we can set aside some money. So
I agree with you. Reserves are critical and we need to do long-term planning. Part of the problem is we look this is our long-term planning is 2 years at a time that I see, which is not good. I mean, it's.
No, and as you'll see,
insufficient.
not just for the IIJA, but we anticipate that, and plus our bonding capacity has been decreasing over the last decade, and it's been reduced by about a third of the CDAC recommendations. And then also the cost of borrowing is going to significantly skyrocket with the interest rates going up. And so our ability to bond and pay for projects is going to decrease, and if we continue, that will continue and worsen. And so the capital bill won't have the capacity to absorb this type of spending. And that's why we propose setting aside $14 million for the women's facility, which won't be breaking ground in this capital bill cycle, but we know it most likely will be in the next one. And that's going to be a very expensive project.
I guess what I worry about as well is the CDAC committee looking at, okay, you had $320 million, you had the money set aside. Now you don't, you spent all your money. We're probably not going to give you as much money this time because now we already know that you've got to make up for the monies that you let go, you slip through your fingers. And so now your capacity to bond is less. And that's just in the CDAC. Never mind if your bonding capacity within the bonding community says, well, listen, we already know that you're going to have to come up with another $16 million to access that $320 million. We're gonna drop you down a little bit, and then again, our capacity to borrow money at a lower rate and to get more projects done is diminished by a lot. That worries.
Yeah, and it is a known expense in the outer years, and so it can be appropriated for that purpose in the capital bill for those outer years, and keep it, without being touched,
Yeah, so let's see that schedule. Can I ask Dan, I think there is a schedule of funding, right, for multiple years for the water wastewater? Because it has to be, they don't just do a 2-year plan.
I believe
The governor's spreadsheet had an outlook, going out several years.
Or just 3 more years, but that's different than the DEC one, because the projects are coming in. So you guys have, it's like airplanes at an airport. You don't just wait for them to come and, that they're coming.
Well, yes,
right?
and we know
So-
the projects that are in the queue.
Right.
We've provided that list, and then we've also heard from the communities that testified that those are just the projects that they have a lot more pent up demand that's without the funding, they're not gonna focus on, but now knowing that this funding's coming, we know there's even more projects coming into the queue.
Right.
So the need is growing, actually, not going the other way of this funding. And we've heard that this will just begin to touch the need in the state that we heard, due to the significant aging infrastructure, we heard from the different communities.
Right, but there is a plan. It would be really helpful to see the plan.
Yeah, but you can see the plan as far as you want to see it, but if you don't have the money to,
But-
if you're planning it based on today's dollars and then the economy goes backwards.
I can
But we
provide you.
can't go faster
This
than.
is the letter that was provided to Senator Kitchell on the budget. And
Okay.
in it provides, there's a list of all of the transportation projects for the match that was in the governor's budget. And there's a list of all of the projects in the queue that would use the IIJ match. And not just in this capital bill, but what was
Yeah.
being set aside for 26 and 27.
We got this, but we don't have the amounts and the dates, and there's some errors too. Like Bellas Falls is shown in the wrong account, stuff like that. But there actually is a plan. I
mean, those are, yeah.
Well,
And some of it is whether the town can get a
Right,
contractor on board and is ready to go. And so they get reprioritized all the time when
Right.
they grab the funding.
the engineers work on this like 3 years, 4 years in advance, so it's known. So we really just need to see that. Because we were told earlier in this process that there wasn't capacity to do more than was already in the queue. Which before the numbers changed, so that's something we need to verify.
I don't know what you mean by that.
My concern, like 2 months ago, 3 months ago, was that folks would get the wrong message that there were more facilities available than, or more money available than is available, and that was when we had the large amount of money here. So I think it's really important to be realistic with the towns on
So I still
what
don't know.
is happening.
I don't know what
There's
you're.
not, there's a funding issue, but then there's also just a logistical issue. So it's really important to have the whole picture. And I've been trying to get that, but I'll try again next week. I mean, there is a spreadsheet somewhere. There's a list. I mean, they just updated it, I think last week, of the projects and the money and when it's gonna happen. And they could probably go out 10 years.
Yeah, I'll work with Secretary Moore and A&R
Yeah.
on the IIJ projects.
Because-
A little bit more specificity
Yes.
seeking on the list of
Because
those
that
projects.
exists.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
Please.
Happy to do that.
Thank you.
And then continuing to move on section 2 of the capital bill, the governors recommend have 1.25 million of cash fund dollars for the new courthouse replacement for planning purposes. The House version keeps it at 1.25, but moved 750,000 from cash to bonded. We really don't have a need for bonded dollars on that project because it is all planning and design work. We're still looking for a site, and so, you know, to use bonded dollars for planning and design goes counter to the, you know, to the purpose of the cash fund and what we really want to use those dollars for. And so we'd ask that be moved back into the cash fund column. And then also in section 3 of the capital bill, the governor's budget set aside $14 million of bonded capacity for the women's facility, knowing that that's going to be a large expense in the outer capital bill. The House reduced that to 13 million and then reallocated $1 million of that to upgrade some HVACs, provide air conditioning in correctional centers across the state. 300,000 for planning and design and 700,000 for construction. We think it's premature, given the last capital bill included $500,000 for an HVAC feasibility study for that purpose. In the correctional centers, that work is undergoing, and we believe it's prudent to wait for the results of that study before spending dollars on HVAC and facilities.
It'd be a study.
That's the 300,000 right there.
Or 700.
It's a total of $1 million, 300 for planning and design,
Okay,
and
right.
700 for actual construction.
Okay.
And so given the outstanding feasibility study that's underway, that's someone's work, a contractor's working on that now, we believe it's premature. And
Okay, so $1 million, I see, yeah, I see it right there.
When's the study gonna be done?
Hopefully within the next year, the contractor's working on that now.
So, Sean, I think you might have just said it, but I was glossed over a little bit thinking about some other thoughts. I apologize. The line above that on line 29, the 14 million that they had for the women's correctional facility. I know you just talked about it, I'm sorry. But they took $1 million out of that. What was the reasoning for that? Or
That was, and they moved it to, so.
The HVAC, that's where they took the money from?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
where they took the money.
Okay, thank you for that.
Primarily. And then there were some, proposals to sell specific properties in the capital bill. The House added some language regarding the sale of each property.
And that's down here, the one across the way.
Well, there's 110 State Street, there's 108 Cherry Street, and then also they added some language regarding the property where Stanley and Wasson Hall used to be on the Waterbury campus that were torn down last year, and they're right adjacent to the parking lot that goes with that property. So section 19A in the capital bill is specific to 110 State Street. We are supportive of providing a right of first refusal to the town of Montpelier for that property. The House language essentially gives them a year to notify us whether they want to purchase it, and then additional time to then negotiate sale terms. We believe that that's too long a period. We'd like to see them have a right to invoke within 3 months, and then complete the sale by June of 24 if they invoke those.
Okay, so I'm gonna say it out loud in real estate, just out of the way that it goes, and maybe it's different in commercial properties or state properties or whatever. So typically what will happen in real estate, if somebody has the first right of refusal, you'll market that property to everybody. You'll get an offer, marketing with the known fact that there's a first right of refusal on that property by the city of Montpelier. You get your best offer, and whoever wants to offer, and then Montpelier will have a chance at that point in time to exercise that purchase and sale. And we don't ever give anybody a year. I mean, if they really have the want for that building, they should already have known or have something in place, whatever the process is to move forward. And a lot of us have been in town government and knows that it shouldn't take a year's time to buy a property should you already have a want or a need for it. You should be able to move quicker on that. So that's how it works in real estate. So,
and I think the House language contemplates the BGS commissioner writing to the communities and informing them and offering them that right. And then they have that year. So it would be under the House language, it's a little different. So we were asking that they have a 90-day period to invoke that right. And then, within the end of the state fiscal year, 24 to complete that purchase.
Okay, and usually give your customers 1 hour.
I know, that's why people in line.
Every time you get the claim, you got 1 hour to make your the buyer.
Yeah, you signed 3 purchase and sales.
I earn bill that every day, but 1 hour left.
Yeah.
Would you give them an amount?
But
because right of first refusal is usually, as you say.
In the fair process market condition, and that's really what we want to do.
Right, but that's not what you're talking about.
Well, no, I think we would get the property appraised and then negotiate for the value.
But appraised is different than what you would pay.
Well, if you market, well, depending on what the process is, but if you market the property, a lot of times what you do is you'll market the property and get the biggest and best offer you can get, and then let them exercise it after that. But you guys are saying,
well, the House language, I think, approached it differently. I think we're open to. I think we just want to make sure the time frame is much more condensed than it's very open-ended right now in the House language. I mean, we're fine with the concept of an offer of first refusal. I think the mechanics could be worked out in modified language, similar to your concerns there to make sure.
A lot of things can change in a year. Yeah, a lot of things can change in a year for sure.
Well, the folks said that this is what you normally do, is you give the city first dibs. But I think it looks like you're having to make a new process.
This language gives it a new process.
Well, what do you normally do?
I would defer to the BGS commissioner to come in and testify to the normal customary practice. Given I'm relatively new at the agency, I've not had a lot of experience in history with sale properties, just to be transparent.
You have plenty else we really want.
Yeah, and so and there's similar language for the other 2 properties, 110, and again, we would ask that it would be consistent in the time frame shortened between the 3 of those. And I can say that I spoke about our concerns with the city of Burlington because we've met with them and been in communications with them, given the concerns they've raised about 108 Cherry Street, and they're comfortable with the language and our request here that we're making to the committee that would work for them.
With Burlington.
It would Burlington.
Great.
Yes. And then also with the sale of the 108 Cherry Street, the House added language about relocating AHS staff into downtown Burlington. The language is a little broad. It could be interpreted to mean all of the staff on that site. And we've always intended to keep the frontline district off staff in downtown Burlington and the central office staff for the health department to Waterbury. And we are just would propose language. Yes, we can propose some language that would clarify that a little bit. Absolutely.
All of what you're talking about, you're gonna give some.
Yeah. Yes, we will.
Right, okay,
Yes.
thank you for that. Thank you. That's very helpful.
Absolutely.
Because we're getting tired.
And then also they've added some, the House added some reporting requirements and some statutory changes that give us a little concern as well. Section 24 requires the administration to file a site report on or before January 15th of 2024. We are generally supportive of filing that proposed site report. What gives us concern is then it asks for monthly status updates beginning in September running through December. And we believe that by, if we find a site, proposed site, we can file that report prior to January 15th. And, and it's kind of duplicative and a little burdensome to have us report monthly on that. So we would like to keep the language on the 15th or sooner on or before the 15th of January, but remove the requirement of monthly updates.
Okay.
Also, there's language in section 29 that is discretionary that updates some of the duties of the Commissioner of Buildings and General Services, allowing them to meet.
Yeah, we flagged that already.
Yes, yeah, and so that just, that practice happens and it's discretionary, so we don't feel it's
prescriptive.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, and it's not really necessary. We don't feel it's necessary.
We don't feel so. Well, I shouldn't speak for the whole committee. No.
One more is here in section 28. And then, kind of as I touched on before, regarding support for the State House, they added a significant section regarding the State House expansion, creating a committee, and just given we don't support State House expansion, I believe that we would support that language.
Like at all, you don't
Yes,
support it?
yes.
You think it's just,
We don't think it's necessary, that there's enough space there that could be reconfigured to the existing State House to meet the needs.
Every time we have a meeting in the pavilion, or you look to that second floor and it's just offices and office, nobody in it. It's nice too. I mean, it's not.
Yeah.
So it's not.
I thought we didn't have food stocks access to that forever.
There's language in that
Oh, we're
allows,
trying.
that the House that allows use of that through next June, through the next session, and we're fine with that as well.
You start spending $30 to $40 million in this expansion, you're wow.
And then as her testimony, we had a little bit of a discussion earlier, regarding those one-time, the governor proposed that $62 million and the House funded approximately half of it. We really would love to see the 3.5 million put back in for the AOT district. Because if that comes out of the transportation fund, it just puts more pressure on that fund and our ability to meet the match. And we believe, given it's a capital project, that it was, it should be supported.
I think that the committee's nodded their head in the right direction as far as on that we can, if it was any other garage, if it was even like the one in my district, Lunenburg or somewhere else that was just right there. But when you're going 9-mile round trip with 10 trucks, everything back and through town and all that, and we want to live and breathe the climate goals and changes and all of that. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to be that far away from your work with those big trucks and polluting and traffic and yeah, so.
It was there
Yeah.
100 years ago.
I think it's a great project, but the whole reason we have funds is that they're for certain purposes. And I think the transportation fund should pay for that because it's part of transportation. It's a great project. It's a wonderful.
You can't
project.
it's not an allowable match for federal funds. So if it came out of transportation funds, it would all be state funds that we would use, which then would put pressure on our ability to
Right.
draw down the other federal funds, which has always been a challenge.
Right, we have the capacity to bond or
But
use
that's
cash.
why we have, or maybe we do need fees.
No.
I mean,
Or,
well, that's the kind of
maybe-
thing.
No, we're saying there's so,
Or
there's
maybe-
one-time money.
or maybe we,
We're the highest fee state right now, it's all surrounding states.
Of transportation fees?
Like that registration, everything else.
But
or
we
maybe,
don't have
maybe we gotta
tolls. I
put
don't
the
want
30,
tolls.
maybe we
don't
gotta
have
put the
tolls.
$30 million back in the transportation fund that's got stolen.
No, the tolls are by state,
Stole, what do you?
the tolls.
We
I
can't
know
put
we
any
don't have
tolls on
tolls, and I'm
interstate.
glad we don't have tolls.
Because the
Yes,
federal government paid for the road.
We don't need the fees, we didn't need the money for fees this year.
okay, all I'm saying is when you have funds, the point of funds is to get revenues to fund certain projects. So if we're gonna fund transportation projects out of basically general fund, at least there should be a debt, like a promissory note that the transportation fund pays the general fund. I mean, it messes up the whole reason for good financing.
But to Sean's point, you can leverage federal dollars if you use the capital budget to do it.
I understand, but you could also use other transportation funds. There's a lot in the transportation
But
fund,
you can't leverage federal dollars.
right? But then this fund needs the other federal dollars leverage, right, with the water wastewater. I mean, we could actually have a separate fund for that too. It's not good practice to mess up the reason for the funds. Just because we're out of money on the transportation
So
fund.
why is there $30 million coming out of the transportation fund to fund other parts of government?
There's.
Maybe we should put that back.
No,
Let's put
because
that back.
they have, are you talking about the stuff for the,
Yeah. We have,
for the
we have
state
$30 million,
police?
we have
We're talking
30
about state
million,
police?
yeah, we have $30 million that comes out of the transportation fund that funds other parts of government.
I
So why don't
agree.
we put that back and then we wouldn't have to take the
Because
3.5 year.
The function is
All
for
set, thank you.
transportation. The function
Right.
is for transportation.
Friday afternoon.
Yeah, Friday afternoon. So nice.
And then and you heard from the community today, like restoring the 6 million that was taken out in the House for the municipal control.
Yes.
Control grants is critical for us. And then also the rest of the IIJ back for 26 and 27 for clean and enriching water that was removed by the House.
And you guys are going into appropriations as well?
I believe our finance commissioner has met with Senator Pro Tem.
And you'll keep us up to date on that?
Yes.
Okay, let us know if we need to talk about it over there. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
Have a good Easter. Thank you for hanging around. It was valuable to have you.
No, I was glad to hear the testimony.
Yeah,
Very glad to hear the testimony. I'll say this will be the first holiday and none of our kids will be home. So-
Oh,
no.
yeah.
Do you have a dog?
Yeah, we have a couple dogs.
Good. Cats away from the lilies, I'm told that's a bad
With the information that Wendy asked for.
Okay.
Neil Kamen was watching this.
Yeah.
And he emailed me 3 documents to share with you.
Thank
I
goodness.
sent you the email
All right,
in
good.
response to your questions and along.
Yeah, I mean, I know I've
You
been
can read that
asking
Easter
for.
Sunday.
There's a message in there for you. I just want to tell you that page.
Well, I want to thank everybody for
You where you
their
had